Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to day 111 of the 12 steps applied to COVID-19 presented by Free to Hope. Yes, from recovery, emerge empowered to do what? To give hope to others, help others prosper equally. And because of the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous that's been in existence for over 80 plus years, I celebrated what? 31 years. Let me show you 31 years on February the 23rd of 2021. Only by the grace of God and one day at a time. To God be the glory. Not only did I celebrate 31 years of recovery, right? I'm also celebrating 111 days of being free from COVID-19. Yes, me and 7 members of my family have been recovered from COVID-19 just for today, which is why we have to still apply these 12 spiritual principles to taking the simple suggestions of the CDC by washing our hands, wearing a mask, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, getting vaccinated. Why? So that we can save our lives, save the lives of our loved ones, save your life and your loved ones and every other human being as possible. Because guess what? Only our Creator knows the beginning, the middle, and the end of this pandemic. It's not the first pandemic, nor will it be the last. However, during this pandemic, we have a solution. And they are found in the 12 steps that are spiritual in nature. So before we get started, let's give our Creator the homage and the acknowledgement, yes, and the praise, yes, for knowing it all and giving us the solution to apply to this COVID-19 pandemic. And we want to pay homage to every human being in any way, shape, form, or fashion who are dealing with the effects of COVID-19, its impact, its outcome, and its fatalities. So let's give homage to the entire human race as our Creator decides when enough is enough. Join me for 30 seconds in a moment of silence. Join me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, on behalf of my Creator, not that He needs it, right? And on behalf of the entire human race, let me say thank you for tuning in. Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for being inspired, encouraged, right? So that you can apply these same spiritual principles, right? And practice the simple suggestions offered by the CDC. We have to, we must stop the perpetuation of this devastating pandemic and its variants, right? We know that the numbers have increased from last year, coming up on April the 1st, where Dr. Scott T. Allison wrote an article in Psychology Today saying that we as a world can benefit from the wisdom of the 12-step programs. And as a result of last year, now that we in a new year, coming up on a new month, April, and that's when we realize that this pandemic we cannot take for granted. Just look at the numbers. They are increasing and it's still going to get worse before it gets better. That's why we have to apply these 12 spiritual principles from a spiritual angle, dealing with any and all physical conditions, including COVID-19. We have to, we will, we can, we must, just for the preservation of the human race. So in our 12-step program, they say some of us must die in order for some of us to live. Why? Because if you were like me before I contracted COVID-19, I took it for granted. I was defiant. I was rebellious. Yes, I had an attitude of being invincible. I was selfish, self-centered. Yes. And therefore, I know I contributed to contracting COVID-19 as well as infecting members of my family from as young as 2 years old to 78 years old. And I had the information of the 12 steps and did not apply them. Now, ain't that something? 30-something years last year when I had it, right? Didn't apply it. My creator said, that's okay, Edwina. I'm using you to share the 12 steps, right, and how they benefited you in your 30 years. But I'm also going to allow you to share your experience, your strength, and your hope, your wisdom, your lack of wisdom, your bad choices, and your bad decisions, and contributing to contracting COVID-19 and infecting family members. But I'm going to deliver you all because you too can share about that in order to save lives. So God uses shattered, broken, wounded people like you and like me to rescue shattered, wounded, and broken people like you and like me. All right. So before we get started, I want to again encourage you to go back today, April the 1st of 2020, to see the beginning of my podcast, right? That started as a result of Dr. Scott T. Allison's article and using Jason Waller's breakdown of the 12 steps. And if you want to see what COVID-19 looked like on me in person, I'm going to show you a picture. Go back to December the 3rd. Let me show you this picture because I sat before you, right? Very sickly. I couldn't smell. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't taste. My body felt like a toothache. And guess what? I sat before you just like that because the God I serve says you have to be totally transparent. You have to tell the truth. You have to take off all those masks and learn how to put on the mask that's going to save your life and the lives of others. So go back to December the 3rd, and you will see the transformation of me having COVID-19 to looking like I did next to that picture, but seeing the progression as I sit before you now. All right. So the other thing that I want to encourage you to do is go to aa.org and find out about the 12 steps, right? And also learn that other adversities that we experience as human beings, right? They have Gamblers Anonymous, Sex Anonymous, Al-Anon Anonymous, Alateen Anonymous, Workaholics Anonymous. They all use the same spiritual steps to be applied to any and all adversities. And that's why we are establishing COVID-19 Anonymous. But we don't want to be anonymous. We want to be wide open. We want to share our experience, our strength, our hope, our wisdom, our lack of wisdom, our bad choices, our bad decisions. We have to, in order to stop this devastating perpetuation of COVID-19. All right. So we are going to continue with the applying the 12 steps to COVID-19. Many of you know repetition is vitally important. And the only way that I can continue to come before you is by soliciting sponsors who believe in what we're doing, getting the word out, making attempts to encourage people, inspire people to do the simple CDC suggestions. Yes. And so the information is free to the public. Right? But we want to solicit sponsors to increase our platform, to upgrade our equipment and hopefully become syndicated. Huh? Somebody said, Edwina, you should be syndicated. And I said, okay, well, let me ask God and let me plant that seed, because you planted one in me, and let me leave the outcomes to him. So if it's God's will that I become syndicated as a servant of him to save one life, one family, one culture, one community, one city, one state, one country, and if it's shown simultaneously around the world, we can, we will, we must stop the perpetuation of this COVID-19. So if it's God's will that I get more sponsors in order to become syndicated, please join us. All right. So let me therefore acknowledge my sponsors. All right. And they are Free to Hope, From Recovery, Emerge, Empowered. Right. We have Patchwork Human Services, LLC by Ebony Madry. We have Levante and Dorsey and Associates, LLC. We have Academy of Peace, my dear friend, Dr. J. Macklin, as we both mourn the loss of our dear friend who was one of my sponsors, and that was Dr. Mary Douglas Bailey of MDB Associates. Our hat goes off to Dr. Mary Douglas Bailey. Crafty Crab Seafood is where I had my 31st anniversary. Yes. On February the 23rd, we went to Crafty Crab Seafood here in Wilmington, Delaware. They practiced the CDC's guidelines, and we practice it as patrons. Okay, so we want you to patronize Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant. You want to know where I go every morning for my 12-step meeting? I go to the 1212 Corporation. It's a recovery safe haven for those who are in recovery from alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness. I've been going there for over 30 years to attend my 12-step meetings. So please visit and look up the 1212 Corporation if you or your family members need a safe haven to be surrounded by peers, positive things going on, positive programs, and more importantly, a place to just be who you are, because we understand. All right. I want to go to my other sponsors, which include Women Do Haul Transportation Services, LLC. Mr. C's Barbershop is responsible for my crown that I wear every day. Morgan's of Delaware, I'm wearing one of her outfits today. Yes. And my Afrocentric attire comes from Lady T at Morgan's of Delaware. Some of the jewelry I wear is jewelry by Catherine Butler. And some of the outfits I also wear are from Jones Accessories of Philadelphia. And every morning from 4:30 to 4:45, I do morning wake up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland. She has words of encouragement, inspiration, and food for the soul. So tune in every morning to Morning Wake Up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland. Finally, Divine Light Recovery Center Supportive Housing. Who would have ever thought that God would lead me to an organization called Divine Light, but God himself, because it aligns with the conversation that Dr. Carl Jung, Dr. Bob, and Bill W. had in the 1930s to say to each other, listen, the medical field can't help y'all. The religious field can't help y'all. Dr. Carl Jung said, listen, Dr. Bob, listen, Bill W., what people with the disease of alcoholism need, they need divine providence. They need divine intervention that will bring about a spiritual experience, They will have a spiritual awakening, therefore a spiritual transformation. They will increase their spiritual maturity to achieve a psychic change. That's what alcoholics need, a psychic change. And so who would have ever thought that through divine providence, divine intervention, I'll be sent to Divine Light, all right? So please patronize them as well. Now, I mentioned two of my resources. earlier in this recovery conversation, and they are Dr. Scott T. Allison and his article in Psychology Today. The actual date was March the 31st of 2020. And there he wrote 7 points, and the article caption reads, how wisdom of the 12-step programs can help get us through April of 2020. But look at where we are now. We are embarking upon April 2021, and the numbers are close to 600,000. Who would have ever thought? And they are going to get worse. That's why we must apply these 12 spiritual principles to practice the simple suggestions of the CDC just by washing your hands, wearing a mask, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated, okay? And so in order for you and I to help understand what the 12 spiritual principles are, we use the template and narrative and questions posed by Jason Waller. So go to jasonwaller.com to see how he breaks down those 12 spiritual principles using other resources and injecting his own personal experience, strength, hope, and wisdom. jasonwaller.com. All right. So what I would like to also share with you is that as a result of doing these 12 spiritual principles and practicing them in all my affairs one day at a time, we get to learn how to apply these spiritual angles to any and all physical conditions. As Donald Lawrence's song Spiritual says, you are not a natural being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being encased in this natural experience. I had 22 years in recovery, and that song turned my world right side up. As much as I had been learning, I got that divine intervention and obtained that divine providence and was sent to the divine light. And it was increased to realize that, no, Edwina, this is just the temple. This is just the vehicle, right? This is just the vessel. What spirits will occupy and manifest itself through this temple, right? Okay, so we learned through our 4th step that the spirits of deceit, dishonesty, unfaithfulness, stealing, lying operated through this temple and manifested itself, right? To the point where on February the 22nd of 1990, my character was so defected up that I put myself underneath a parked car, 3 o'clock in the morning, getting high with my stepson, doing all kinds of sexual favors with my stepson. Now, how defective was my character then? But underneath that parked car, I had a flashback of my life, the rapes, the setups, the beat-ups, the suicide attempts. My family didn't like me. My children disowned me. I hated myself. And somewhere deep down in my spirit, I hollered out to a God that I didn't know, whoever they say you are, take me out this life now or show me a better way. And I haven't looked back since. So that song, Spiritual, please listen to it by Donald Lawrence and have your spirit awakened. Okay? And so as a result of being in this process and being delivered and applying all these physical conditions with spiritual angles, I've been through a lot, but I'm not the only one. There are millions of us who are practicing these 12 spiritual principles in all our affairs, and now we must collectively and simultaneously apply them to COVID-19 and apply the simple suggestions offered by the CDC. So you say, okay, what are the spiritual principles? Repetition is important. So let's see what they are, huh? See if you are listening or have been listening, or were you just hearing me, all right? So let's go and look at let's look at the 12 steps that are identified, all right? So the first one, we know we have to take 100%, right? And that is 1. We admitted we were powerless over COVID-19, because now we are changing the area of focus to COVID-19 and not alcohol, not gambling, not Love Anonymous, none of that. We're applying it to COVID-19. Admitted we were powerless over COVID-19, that our lives had become unmanageable. Yes, this step must be taken 100% with total acceptance and without any reservations whatsoever. 2, came to believe that a power or powers greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And sanity only means soundness of mind. The powers greater than you could be the CDC suggestions or tangible evidence, like you see people suffering from COVID-19, dying from COVID-19, or talking with ones who have lost loved ones to COVID-19, have been restored from COVID-19, sharing and hearing their experience is a power greater than you. And ultimately, we will know that it's a power greater than us all. Can restore us to sanity and soundness of mind, right? And recovery principle number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So if that power or powers greater than you and I are working for our good and in our best interest, why wouldn't we want to keep turning our will and our lives over to the care of them? So you better believe I'm turning my will and my life over every day to the mask, to washing my hands, right? To social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested. And yes, I even got vaccinated. I'll show you that too. So let's continue on with these 12 steps overview. And please go to aa.org or Jason Waller and learn more about them. Recovery principle number 4 states that made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. And so when, where, and how were our character defects formulated? Such as selfishness, being defiant, right? Being rebellious, having that attitude of being invincible, doing that searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, right? Here we know that our Creator knows everything. We know a lot about ourselves, but it's a humbling experience to sit before someone else and share with them your deepest and darkest secrets. Why? Because we need to reveal what has been concealed for so long, and that has not been working in our lives, but destroying our lives. Yes. So number 5 is crucial. So once we identify our character defects, getting to the exact nature of our wrongs, we present ourselves like an onion before our higher power and just ask him to do with me as you will. Please remove anything that prevents me from practicing the simple suggestions that will save my life, of washing my hands, social distancing, wearing a mask, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated. Remove them so I can be restored to sanity, soundness of mind. All right. So once we are entirely ready and we go about our day, and then there are times we may fall short now that we are aware of our character defects and see that we are not doing what we're supposed to do, we are going to humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And that's in recovery principle number 7. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So when we don't want to wear a mask, we ask God, please take that from me so I can put my mask on. When we want to ignore washing our hands, humbly ask him to remove that shortcoming that prevents you from washing your hands. When we want to go to gatherings or family events, knowing that we shouldn't, ask him to remove that shortcoming, and he will if we listen and obey. Recovery principle number 8, which we will continue today. Once we identified and recovery principle number 4, what character defects that were used to harm other people in one way, shape, or form, we're going to use that 4-step list to compose our 8-step list. So you better believe I'm going to have all my grandchildren on that list. I'm going to have people that I visited at the 1212, and I'm going to put the public in general on that list because I was taken and did take COVID-19 for granted and I caused harm. All right. Recovery principle number 9 says, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, even you, even me. So when I make those direct amends, I am doing it by wearing my mask, washing my hands, social distancing, contact tracing. I am making amends. Yes, in one way, shape, form, or fashion by practicing the simple suggestions of the CDC, right? And so what we also want to be able to do once we make those amends, we want to make sure that we don't cause any more harm. And that's done by continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, to promptly admit it. Yes. So taking that inventory on a daily basis, I'm reminded to wear my mask. I'm reminded to not social distancing. I'm reminded to call the establishment to see if they are practicing the CDC suggestions. Why? Because I don't want to cause any more harm. But when I do, I need to promptly admit it so I can be set free that day and not carry any baggage from yesterday into today, right? Number 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And this is the hit, as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry it out. So in recovery principle number 3, where we made that decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him, and we saw how we have benefited from the other spiritual principles until we get to step 11, we want to increase and improve that personal relationship with the God of our understanding. Through prayer and meditation and praying only for the knowledge of his will and the power for us to carry that out. So God, give me the power to wear that mask, wash my hands, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and definitely give me the power to get vaccinated. Yes, he will if you just pray, meditate, and ask and humble yourself to know that you can be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And finally, when we get to recovery principle number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others regarding COVID-19. Yes, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So now we have been restored to sanity. We have had that spiritual experience. I know I did by contracting COVID-19 and infecting my family members, right? I had a spiritual awakening. It increased my spiritual maturity. Once again, I had a spiritual transformation. And once again, I had a psychic change regarding applying these simple suggestions, of the CDC and doing what they ask us to do to save our lives and save the lives of others. So that's what the 12 recovery principles are. And that's how we can apply them to COVID-19. And it's a beautiful thing now that I've been delivered, I've been free, I'm in recovery, I've been restored from COVID-19. Guess what? I don't want to catch it again, nor do I want to infect my family members again. And so I will advocate for us to practice the simple suggestions of the 12 spiritual principles and apply them to the simple suggestions of the CDC. At this point, we will stop the perpetuation of COVID-19, but it depends on you and me. It starts with you and it starts with me. Yes, we can. We will. We must. Okay? And so as a result of practicing these 12 spiritual principles, applying them to the CDC suggestions, we will be a part of the solution and no longer a part of the problem. And so I had to go through what everybody else is going through. Should I take the vaccination shot? Should I not? So I did my homework, did my research, asked some questions, and I was convinced that I needed to take that vaccination shot. Why? Because I looked at everybody else who was taking it, number one. Number two, I listened to what they were saying that it does or it doesn't do, right? And so if I want to stop the severity of the symptoms that I had and watching my 2-year-old grandson go through those severe symptoms of having a fever for 4 or 5 days, you're telling me that if I take the vaccination shot, it will decrease the severity of the symptoms of COVID-19? Yes. That means it will decrease the possibility of me being hospitalized? Yes. Oh, and that also means that if I'm not hospitalized, there's a great chance I won't die? Yes. Yes. Well, honey, that was enough to convince me. So let me show you my first shot on February the 6th of 2021 by Dr. Copeland. Yes.
Here we go, my daughter.
Dr. Copeland. Excited about him here. Yes. All right. And 4 weeks later, on March the 4th, I got my second shot. Now listen to what she's saying.
All right. Okay. Let's get you a little shot of hope here, my dear.
Yes, dear.
A shot of hope. Did you hear that? A shot of hope is what she said. So yes, I've been vaccinated, and I want to encourage all people who are age appropriate to get vaccinated as well. But if you're like me, you have doubts, you have concerns, do your research, ask the questions, talk to other people, do your work, and ask yourself, is it worth saving your life? Is it worth you not being hospitalized? Is it worth you not experiencing the severity of the symptoms of COVID-19? Then the answer would be yes. Are you humble enough? Do you have enough humility to put your pride and ego and all that kind of BS aside in order to save your life, to save the lives of your loved ones? Come on now. So, all right, now that we got that out the way, what I want to do now is continue with recovery principle number 8 and using Jason Waller's template on asking some questions that will give you the foundation, the preparation necessary to embrace all these steps. And all these questions are directed towards each step just to encourage you, inspire you, and so you can see the benefit of doing the steps. So we've been doing recovery principle number 8, and I'm at the point where we are we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. That's what the step asks you to do. And these particular questions will help you to understand why you need to practice. You need to meditate and pray on answering these questions, because we don't want anything to stand in the way of you getting the help that you need to save your life and save the lives of others. Okay, so let's see what an overview of what we've been doing so far in regards to applying recovery principle number 4 and using that to help us identify the list in recovery principle number 8. All right, so this is what I want to show you. All right, so remember I had the information on recovery principle number 4, and they were to identify character defects like resentments, anger, stealing, lying, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so in recovery principle number 4, we had those 4 columns that said what was the character defect, right? And so I know that I listed on my column, the character defect was resentment. Who did I have a resentment against? I had a resentment against my mother. right? Because she got the attention of my dad and I didn't like that. Well, as a result of that, what harm did I cause to my mother by having that resentment? Well, I began to lie on her and I stole from her. And so I caused her harm. So in my eighth step, I can say, well, my mother, after I put myself on the list first, remember that conversation, right? The next person I put on that list is my mother. And because of my mother having all that attention from my dad, I caused a lot of harm in that way. But as a person that was on drugs and alcohol and out there prostituting, right, I caused my mom a lot of harm. I stole her peace. Yes, she worried about me all the time. So on my eighth step, I wanted to put my mother down as the second person, and I identified how I caused harm to her. As a result of me doing my fourth step again, after my mother, I put my siblings down because I had a resentment against them. And I also caused harm to them by manipulating them, right? So they needed to go on my list as well, right? I also had to put my dad on the list because I had resentments against him. Why? Because what I did was enable him. Every time he wanted to know about my mom and what she was doing, I was the one that he chose to tell him the truth and what happened. So, in other words, I enabled him. And so that just gives you an example of using your fourth step and identifying what the character defect was and what harm you caused. I also shared with you one of the earlier videos about me having to owe IRS some money, right? I didn't pay taxes. I didn't file taxes, none of that. And I caused the IRS harm, right? Listen, I know they got what, listen. I was dishonest. I did not do what I was supposed to do, and therefore I caused harm. So no matter what you think about the other person or the situation, I have to keep the focus on myself. All right. And so years later in recovery, I was able to as a result of putting them on my list, I was able to become willing to make amends even to the IRS. All right. So that's some examples of using your fourth step, right, to identify the character defect, what harm you caused, so that you can identify what type of amends to make. All right. So let's go to some more questions posed by Jason Waller. All right. So these are the questions we went over so far. And if you need to go back to previous podcasts, please do so. All right. So one was, are there resentments in the way of your willingness to make amends? Are there resentments in the way of your willingness to make amends? Think about somebody that needs to be put on the list that you know you caused harm to, right? But you have a resentment against them because you want to blame them for you doing what you did to them. Therefore, you have a resentment, right? So is that resentment keeping you from having the willingness, to make amends when the opportunity presented itself, just by identifying the part that you played in it, right? Question number 2 says, are you hesitating in any way before working on the 8th step? If so, why? The 8th step actually allows you to see the harm you have caused over your lifespan in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Just like we looked at ourselves in recovery principle number 4, we identified the liabilities and the assets. But guess what? Character defects are nothing more than God-given natural instincts that have far exceeded their purpose. And as a result of that, they were used to cause harm to other people. So if you want to blame it on the character defects, fine. Then put those people on the list. Those organizations or agencies, don't hesitate because you want to be set free. All right? Number 3 was, why is it valuable to determine the exact nature of your wrongs? See, we don't want to rationalize. We don't want to justify. We don't want to make excuses. We want to get to the exact nature of why. Why we did what we did, right? And so when we identify that character defect of jealousy, right, that was camouflaged by resentment, and getting to the exact nature, we know that the exact nature was fear, and fear alone. Fear of not having, fear of not getting, fear of not being accepted, fear of not being provided for, fear. And before we came into recovery, we used to run from fear. That was camouflaged by anger, resentments, jealousy, but it was fear. So we forgot everything and we ran. Or we effed everything and we run. No, in recovery, we learn to face everything and recover. That's the words for the acronym of fear. Face everything and recover. But we can't unless we get to the exact nature of that iceberg, get to the exact nature of that onion, the core of that onion. Because that's where it all lies. That's why it's valuable to get to the exact nature. Okay? Number 4, why is it so essential that you are very clear about your responsibility? Now, all right, so you have a hard time understanding that question? Let me give you some examples. You have children, you have a mate, you have a boss, you have workers. Are you able to identify and challenge what they did or what they didn't do? Are you willing to let them know where they were irresponsible at? Are you so high righteous that only you are the one who's perfect and they are not? But you are able to identify the irresponsibilities of other people, but not of your own. So when we keep the focus on ourselves, we are saying, why is it so essential that you are very clear? I am very clear about my responsibility. Yes, I can only clean out my closet. I can only wipe off my side of the street. Right? I have to be responsible for my attitudes, my ideas, my behaviors, my choices, my decisions. And I just need to know through the exact nature, the character defects of why I did all that. So I need to be held accountable. I need to be held responsible. Yes, that's why it's essential, because if not, I'll keep blaming anything and everything. That's not recovery. That's not recovery. That's not going to set you free. You need to be set free from yourself. When you can be set free from yourself, acknowledge your wrongdoings, acknowledge your wrongs, and be man enough, woman enough to admit, yes, I make mistakes. Yes, I said the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. But you will find out in doing your 12-step work that there's nothing wrong with you. No. We need to find out what happened to us, to make us think that way, feel that way, have that kind of attitude. What happened? And when we find out what happened, then we don't have to be so hard on ourselves, because at that time, at that stage in our lives, it was based on where we were at that time. So you can't be held, responsible to that extent of what you were thinking back then. It is what it is. You only know what you know when you know it. But you can be and should be held accountable. So that's why it is so essential that you are clear, I am clear, about my responsibility. Yes. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Are there people to whom you owe an amends who may be a threat to your safety or about whom you are concerned in some other way? Let's talk about that. Are there people to whom you owe an amends who may be a threat to your safety? Yes. Now, if I'm applying this to COVID-19, this is just a scenario, all right? I, for some reason, recognized that I had the symptoms of the coughing, the taste, the loss of smell, the achiness, but I was in denial. I wanted to ignore it. I didn't want to even contemplate thinking I had COVID-19. But all the signs and symptoms were there. And then because of my defiance, my self-centeredness, my selfishness, I decided to go to a family gathering. Knowing. No. Yeah, knowing. Something ain't right. But I go around to this family gathering. And then a couple days later, a couple weeks later, I found out that, those family members, some of them, were tested positive for COVID-19. And they are trying to wonder who, what, we was all family, da-da-da. I know nobody wouldn't come around, da-da-da-da-da, right? Oh, could you imagine what it would be like if you were to go to that hospital or to that house or to visit individuals and you let them know that it was you? What do you think they're going to do to you? What do you think will happen? The fact that they lost their mother, they lost their child. What do you think could happen to you based on their emotions? Based on you admitting that you deliberately knew you had it and you decided your life could be in danger, couldn't it? All righty then. So, are there people to whom you owe amends to who may be a threat to your safety? Or about whom you are concerned in some other way? So that means while doing these steps, y'all, that are spiritual in nature to address any and all physical conditions can set the foundation for you to be set free from recovery, emerge empowered, to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. But recovery principle number 8 says just make the list. Just make the list. And identify the situation. Identify the harm you could have possibly caused. So therefore, you can know what type of amends to make, either direct amends or indirect amends. If you broke somebody's fence, you can make that direct amends, right, by repairing their fence. If you stole somebody's money, right, you can make direct amends by paying them back their money. Suppose you were like me and cheated, right? I caused harm to family members. I caused harm to the man's or the woman's mate, right? And if I was to go up to them and tell them I did this to your wife, I did this to your husband, that could cause a problem. So therefore, I cannot make direct amends, but I can make indirect amends by changing my behavior and practice not cheating anymore. That's indirect amends by changing my behaviors. Yes, when we come into recovery, people with alcoholism, drug addiction, and now with COVID-19, right? We come into recovery. We are, in essence, making amends to the whole world, but beginning with ourselves. Yes, that is direct amends. And we will learn how to make amends to others directly or indirectly. But we can't start doing it until we learn how to do it for and to ourselves. So the mere fact that we are in recovery says that we are beginning to make direct amends to ourselves and have the possibility of making any and all amends to everybody else, including organizations like the IRS. All right, so let's see if I can get a couple more in here. All right, here's one. Why is simply saying, I'm sorry, alone not sufficient to repair the damage that you've caused? Why isn't saying I'm sorry alone isn't enough? I'm sorry. Yeah, but you're a sorry ass. How about that? Particularly those with the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction, And now that we are applying it to COVID-19, can you imagine when you have directly impacted somebody and it caused their death because you refuse to wear a mask, you refuse to wash your hands, you refuse to social distancing, you refuse to contact tracing, you refuse to get tested, and you won't get vaccinated? Can you imagine you going to somebody that you possibly could have infected and say, I'm sorry? Ooh, really? There, by the grace of God, there go I. How would you feel if that happened to you? If the tables were turned and somebody came to you to say, you're sorry, but my mother has died because of your defiance. My baby have died because of your carelessness and recklessness, and you want to tell me you're sorry? But there's 12 steps for everybody, because all of us are ill to some extent, and all of us can benefit from the 12 steps that are spiritual in nature. Yes, because we don't want to live a life of fear, looking over our shoulder, a life of guilt, a life of remorse, a life of regret. That's not living. That is suffering. So we of us who are in recovery, we know that I'm sorry is nothing. Anybody can say I'm sorry, but are you willing to change your behavior? Are you willing to acknowledge that you need to change your attitude? Are you willing to put other people's feelings in front of your own? Are you willing to become selfless in order to be of service to others? If you are grateful, do you show your gratitude? If you want forgiveness, you have to earn it. Saying I'm sorry doesn't cut it. Okay? So that's why saying I'm sorry alone is not enough. All right, let's see. We have why is only changing your behavior not sufficient to repair the damage you've caused? And you would say that's kind of contradictory. No. Don't jump to conclusion. Let's dissect, evaluate, and see what he's saying. Why is only changing your behavior not sufficient to repair the damage you have caused? Okay, real quickly. I changed my behavior by filing taxes now to the IRS. But the harm I caused was I owed them $5,000. Alrighty then. So just changing my behavior to just follow my taxes now does not correct the wrong that I caused. I need to make arrangements to pay for the damage I have caused. So that's why just changing your behavior is not enough for the damage we have caused. Okay, you got that? All right, let's see if we can do one more. Do you have amends to make that are financial, and therefore you do not want to make them? All righty then. So we're going to stop there, and we're going to really talk about that if it's God's will that he reunite us on day 112. If he wakes you up tomorrow morning, wakes me up tomorrow morning, breathe life into you tomorrow, breathe life into me tomorrow, then we will start with that one. Making the amends in the financial area of our lives. Yes, okay. You want to be set free? Tune in tomorrow for all the 12 recovery principles, applying them to the simple suggestions of the CDC. All right. So you are going to be safe, aren't you? You're going to practice social distancing, social distancing, contact tracing. You're going to wear the mask, right? You're going to wash your hands. You're going to get tested, aren't you? You're definitely going to get the vaccination shot, aren't you? I know you are. Better. So let me thank my sponsors again. And let me encourage you also to become a sponsor. I didn't put that up on the screen earlier, so I want to do that now. All right. So if you are willing to be a sponsor, please contact me. Right. So I want to thank, let's see here. Free to Hope, that's me, that's my organization. Patchwork Human Services by Ebony Madry. We have Untitled and Associates, Academy of Peace, Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant, the 1212 Corporation is a recovery safe haven. So read the information on the screen, and you can also become a sponsor to make sure that I stay on the air, I increase my platform, and that I also plant the seed of becoming syndicated. So Women Do Haul Transportation Services, Mr. C's Barbershop, Morgans of Delaware, I'm wearing her outfit today, and Lady T at Morgans of Delaware, my Afrocentric attire, jewelry by Catherine Butler, Jones Accessory of Philadelphia, and every morning for 15 minutes, I get that morning wake up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland, and then Divine Light Recovery Center, supportive housing. So let me close this by recognizing my mother, who celebrated her birthday this month, right on March the 23rd. And she transitioned, but my mama prayed for me. She had me on her mind. I'm so glad that my mother prayed for me. And as a result of her praying for me, I want to acknowledge her